Welcome once again to the official Colorado Sports Hall of Fame podcast. I'm Dave Plati.
And I'm Tim Simmons, subbing today for Jim Sacamano. Dave and I are your co hosts with more than a century worth of experience working in Colorado sports media relation. Myself at one time with Dave at CU, among numerous other experiences.
This week, we continue our reveal of 150 significant moments, including an eventual ranking of the top 50 in Colorado sports history as we celebrate the state's 150th birthday this August 1st. That's the date Colorado was admitted to the Union in 1876 as the 38th state. A veteran committee with 350 combined years of covering and or working in sports in the state are selecting these moments that we will count down at the rate of 5 per week and then daily for the top 10 come the end of July.
We've already covered 96 through 150 in our last 11 podcasts. So this week we are revealing numbers 91 through 95. As we count down, a reminder that all are being archived on the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame website, along with all our podcasts. Go to coloradosports.org, click on the menu bar, which is in the top right-hand corner. Then you hit on the menu bar, and the top 150 moments or podcasts will come up. Just click on those, and you got the information.
But first, we revisit other moments in Colorado sports history that aren't in our top 150, often in or around the date we do our podcast. Over 1,980 have now been identified, all chronologically signifying their importance at the time. We are remembering those that had a significant impact on the state's sports scene. For example,
on March 23rd, 1984, after purchasing the team from Ager Kaiser, Patrick D. Bowen is introduced as the new owner of the Denver Broncos.
Also on March 23rd, in 1963, Colorado's Dean Lahr won the NCAA wrestling title in the 177-pound class, defeating Ohio's Harry Huska 5-2 in Kent, Ohio. Lahr, a Denver North High School graduate, defended his title in 1964. That event was loaded with CSU, and UNC wrestlers. CSU's Gil Sanchez lost a 115-pound class title match, and Ken Hines lost a consolation semifinal in the 191-pound class. Northern Colorado's Jim Kreider lost his consolation semi as well. All earned All-America honors as the Rams finished 7th overall, the top finish by the three state schools.
Hey, on March 23rd, 2002, Metro State, which is now MSU Denver, won its second NCAA Division II men's basketball title in 3 years. Once again, upending Kentucky Wesleyan 80-72, winning the rubber match, as the two teams had also met in 1999 with Kentucky the victor. Patrick Mutombo led the Roadrunners with 29 points, 23 coming in the second half, with Lee Betha adding 19. Mike Dunlap was once again selected as the Division II Coach of the Year, leading Metro that year to a 29-6 record and becoming just the fourth coach to be honored twice with the honor. And of course, Dave, as we discussed, Mike just retired because of health reasons from Colorado Mesa, where he coached the Mavericks for 2 years, got 40 wins, and led them to the NCAA Division II tournament this season.
Then finally, on another yet March 23rd, a lot happens on this date, it seems. In 1986, Dale Douglas won for the first of what would be 11 times on the PGA Senior, now Champions Tour, winning the Vintage Invitational in Indian Wells, California. He won by 4 strokes over Gary Player. His 67, 70, 69, 66, 272 score, or 16 under par scorecard, earned him $40,500.
This is Mark Johnson, voice of the Colorado Buffaloes. As we count down the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, it's worth remembering that great sports moments don't just happen. They're built on preparation, resilience, and staying healthy. And in Colorado, a great sports moment can mean something different to everyone, from Hall of Fame athletes to anyone who simply wants to keep moving. Whether you're chasing championships, personal bests, or just a pain-free morning run, the team at CU Sports Medicine and Performance Center delivers exceptional sports medicine care, from prevention to recovery to performance. Founded right here in Boulder, the CU Sports Medicine and Performance Center brings together CU medicine providers and Boulder community health clinicians to provide comprehensive care that's close to home and rooted in the community they serve. Learn more at cusportsmedicincenter.com.
And now, on with the countdown.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, number 95.
In May 1898, Town and Gown Golf Club opened in Colorado Springs. To this day, one of the oldest continuous operated 18-hole public golf courses west of the Mississippi, and the third oldest overall. The course was purchased by William Jewett in 1910 and renamed the Colorado Springs Golf Club. On June 25th, 1919, it was renamed in the honor of his wife, Patty Jewett, after he deeded the property to the city of Colorado Springs for $1.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, number 94.
On May 31st, 1948, a native of Denver, 37-year-old Johnny Morrow became the first Coloradoan to race in the Indianapolis 500. He started 27th with his Alfa Romeo chassis engine and completed 198 laps before being flagged, finishing 8th overall. His average speed was 121.79 miles per hour. Morrow raced in the Indy cars for Ferrari in the 1940s and 1950s. His family owned several car dealerships and was the only Ferrari importer in Denver for many years. A cousin of Jim Sacamano, by the way, he passed away due to a car accident in 2003 at the age of 92.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, number 93.
November 24th, 1892, one of the state's oldest high school football rivalries was born on this Thanksgiving Day when Pueblo Central defeated Pueblo Centennial 4-0. Touchdowns were worth 4 points at that time, and the conversion was missed. Cited previously as one of the greatest moments in Pueblo sports history, the touchdown was scored by Marvin. I don't know his first name. And that's all they had in the newspaper. They had played 125 times overall, Central and Centennial, the most of any high school rivalry in the state. And along the way, the game became known as the Bell Game, the 75th, which was played last September. And again, my school, Central, leads the series 63-53 with 9 ties. And I think the Wildcats have won the last 9. And to add a personal thing, we just had our 60th reunion in September, and we had the bell at the reunion.
Ding, ding.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, number 92.
On July 21, 1952, Denver native, East High School, and University of Denver graduate Jerome Biffle won the gold medal in the broad jump, which is now the long jump, in the Summer Olympics in Helsinki, Finland, in claiming the gold with a jump of 24 feet, 10 inches. The 23-year-old was the city of Denver's first Olympic gold medal winner and the second medalist. He beat Cornell graduate Meredith Gourdine, who early had beaten him in the Olympic trials for the gold medal by an inch and a half.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, number 91.
On October 19, 1968, University of Colorado track All-American and graduate Bill Toomey won the gold medal in the decathlon at the Mexico City Summer Olympic Games. He won 3 of the 10 events, the 100-meter run, the long jump, and the 400-meter run, for which he set a world decathlon record. He racked up an Olympic record 8,193 total points, winning by 82 over East Germany's Hans-Joachim Welde in the 33-man field. Toomey won 23 of the 38 decathlons he competed in, including the 67 Pan American Games leading up to the Olympics, and held the world record for the most points in a decathlon for nearly 3 years. He was inducted into the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame in 1971. Now, at this time, we want to welcome the 68 gold medal winner in the decathlon at the Mexico City Olympics, Mr. Bill Toomey. Welcome, Bill.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Okay. Well, we got a whole lot of questions for you here when we're going to reminisce and go down a history road here. But first and foremost, how did you find your way from New Canaan, Connecticut in the late 1950s to Boulder and CU?
You have to say, I think I stepped on you. I was trying to tell you something, but go ahead. 1959, say it again.
Said, how did you find your way from New Canaan, Connecticut in the late 50s to Boulder and CU?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay. I won the New England Championship in the long jump with 7 meters. In other words, 23 feet. Nothing great. However, unbeknownst to me, at the University of Colorado, my name was brought up by a discus thrower who went to New Canaan High School who was attending Colorado. And so I then got a letter inviting me to go visit the University of Colorado. And that began my dance with living at 5,000, miles high altitude, which, by the way, by the time Mexico City came into being in 68, years later, having lived at that altitude, the body has a lot of memory. And the altitude at 7,300 feet never bothered me.
Bill, at what point did you decide that the decathlon was your event, and who encouraged you to do it?
My breakthrough really came. Well, the first time I knew or read anything was I went to Coach Potts' office, and there had been on the scoreboard, there's like a big wooden board in the field house with all the track and field records. And at the bottom, it said decathlon. So I didn't know what it was. So I went to the office, and Coach Potts handed me a scoring table and a metric conversion table. So with those in hand, I let my imagination run and, started thinking in terms of how I could approach this. And so they had something called all-comer meets in Palo Alto on Angel Field, which was part of the Stanford campus. And they had them every week. So after I would come home for the summer from the university, I would go to the all-comer meets and practice things like the discus, the pole vault. And, it's like in show business to say it's hard to find places to be bad. Well, all-comer meets were the greatest place in the world to be bad. And so, my first vault was 9 feet. And I was already in college. So, it took a long time. But, I was very lucky to, in these all-comer meets, they had an event where I had really talent in many of the events. It was called the pentathlon. And, same scoring table as the decathlon. But it was like long jump, discus, 200 meter, javelin, and 1,500 meter. So it really was a good indicator of potential for the decathlon because you had a sprint and you had the 1,500. So, and it was a great event that you could build on. And that's exactly what I did. And it took me a long time to climb that ladder of success. But I think climbing that ladder was what track and field was all about for me. It was an adventure. It wasn't just the destination of the Olympics because there were so many in-betweens, so many great meets and so many places. And, in 1965, I made the international team for the first time. And all of a sudden I'm competing in London uh, you know, in Stuttgart, and hungry, and all of a sudden I felt, wow, this is what I want to do. I love international competition. And so, that's really how the whole thing started.
Bill, you have credited your coaches helping with the Olympic process. How did that come about?
Well, Frank Pott gave me a scholarship and gave me pretty much freedom to do the events I wanted to. And he really spent more time with the runners. And so I decided to become a runner rather than one. I mean, I could jump anytime. And it wasn't a thrilling event. And besides that, nobody in the stadium ever came over to the other side of the field from the finish line. They all sat by the finish line so they could see the end of the races. And so, that wasn't my main motivation. But I loved to run. And there was a challenge when I went from never having been at altitude, and we had time trials when I first got to Boulder. And every Saturday I'd run an all-out 300, 400. I am not amplifying this in any way. I came back to the dorm, went to bed at 3 in the afternoon, and did not wake up till 3 the next day in the afternoon. And that happened for like 2 or 3 successive weekends, because altitude is really, you have to respect altitude. But in the 400, you're not going to pace yourself. It's a sprint. And, but no high school coach told us that. In high school, there was really more of a getting everybody, on the team uniforms and getting them to the meets and putting together relay. I remember when I was student teaching at a high school, I thought I'd go over and see what they were doing in track. There was 100 kids on the field and like 3 coaches. And I'm going, this is a mob. There's no way these kids can get into track. So at New Canaan High School, we just had a handful of guys. But we all won state meets. But, frankly, they were in these small schools. And the small school gave you a chance, as I said, like in show business, if not to be great, to be bad. And I don't mean bad in a really harsh way. But, you have to start somewhere. And every athlete has a different set of neuromuscular and intellectual and emotional. There's so many differences from athlete to athlete. But it's how you approach the event mentally, physically, and actually begin to understand the physiology of what running is all about. And one of the things that I learned after the University of Colorado, that if you want to become a 400-meter runner, you shouldn't be doing interval training in the fall. You should be doing maybe 500s or 600s in time trials and training like a quarter miler. And so I carried that on into the decathlon. For me, it was a running event. And if you were good at running, when you're on the first day, the first event's a running event, the 100, and the last day you want to leave them, knowing who you are, is the 400. And so I was good in both, and I could get inside the skulls of the other competitors. I mean, frankly, I had a really good, nobody could really psych me out. Maybe if I'd competed against Daley Thompson, I would have been psyched out. But frankly, I loved competition. Whoever they threw at me, whether it was the Germans, the Russians. My first year, the Russians beat me, Storozhenko. But I was learning. That was my first international. And, we didn't make money, but what we really made in track and field was the ability to put a USA on my chest and know that I represent the greatest country in the world.
I've been reading a feature story series on you in the New Canon paper online, and in that story, it mentioned that as a childhood accident severed a nerve in your right hand, and you only regained about 75% of its use after surgeries, 7 surgeries. Yet you still mastered the javelin and the pole vault with injured hands like that. So you were talking about the mental and the physical aspect. How were you able to overcome that and win all those decathlons?
Well, frankly, it's interesting you would bring that up because I did my first decathlon in 1959, and it was more of an adventure than it was a dedication towards a goal. Okay. And so, I got so tired after that first one. But, I was just out of high school a couple of years. And so it was not until 1963 in an all-comer meet. So I went, when I got to, my bedroom at night before the decathlon in the all-comer meet, I wrote down 6,300 points, put it in my sock drawer. And I had also started to become a fairly decent 400-meter hurdler. And so I said, well, if I get 6,300 in this all-comer meet, I will then choose the decathlon. So it came down to that. I mean, but I had no coach. There was no decathlon coaches, to my knowledge. And so pretty much the secondary approach is to watch other athletes, is to read, and is to look at, stop action, still photographs, and to talk to guys. Some guys know their event. I mean, they may not be the best at it. Technically, they may know more than anybody else. And all of a sudden, it's one of 10 events, the pole vault. And if I tell you this, it's almost unbelievable. In my first national championship, I missed the opening height in the pole vault twice. One more, I would have been out. In the Pan American Games, by the way, I did that 2 or 3 successive national championships. And then at the PIM Games, I missed the opening height twice. And then at the Olympics, I missed the opening height twice. But at the Olympics, there might have been a reason. Second day, one of the events in the decathlon is the pole vault. And so, we all bring our, put them on the bus, they're on the floor. And so we're in contact with them. So the warm-up track is a half mile up a hill from the stadium. And so we bring our poles and we get warmed up for the first event, the hurdles. And so all the poles are left in the same place. So the second day of the decathlon, the poles are brought down by a truck, put on the ground. And all of a sudden, I'm waiting for guys to get there so I could find mine. And then there were none left. There were no poles left. And I'm thinking, nobody's going to steal my pole. That's ridiculous. I mean, you can't conceal a 16-foot pole. So now, okay, I'm starting to get a little nervous. I'm a pretty bad pole vaulter, but I'm really bad with no pole. So I go up the hill, that half-mile run up the hill. I get there, a bunch of guys singing Cielito Lindo, and I'm going, gentlemen. So there's 4 or 5 doors. I open them all, and the last door that I checked was locked. Now, the Olympics are going on. Meanwhile, I'm running up this half-mile hill, talking to a bunch of guys that can't understand me, finding a locked door, and telling them that I was going to destroy the door if they didn't open it. More or less. They could tell that I was frantic. Opened the door, and there was my 16-foot pole.
Wow.
Somebody had segregated my pole. Okay, story's not over. It's just beginning. So now I'm running. Now I got to show my number to get in. I'm competing downstairs, big man. And so now I'm going down the hill carrying my pole, which should have been on the truck, but for some reason, somebody decided to make it safe and lock it behind a door. And so I'm so bad that I'm the first up. I mean, I have to vault. my only warm-up is running down that hill. I have no step. And anybody knows track and field, whether it's the high jump, pole vault, or long jump, your step is critical so that when you take off, that you have an ultimate power position, okay? So what I did was I took what I usually use, like in Lake Tahoe for a warm-up would be like a 3/4 run. So I mapped that out, and I'm up. Okay. I put the bar really low. I always say it in meters, so it doesn't look so low. And so first attempt, I go down and knock the bar off. I'm okay. I've done this before. At my pole, I'm up again because I'm the only guy vaulting. See, when you're first and everybody else has higher start positions, you get to go all your vaults in the beginning. So second time I go down, I'm thinking, I got this. I miss again. This time, not only do I knock over the crossbar, but I think the standards were in danger. So I am now going back for the third attempt. If I miss the third attempt, folks, and ABC doesn't know this is going on. Nobody ever did. So I'm back there. I now go down for the third time. I stop halfway down. And I'm going, Bill, you've got a master's from Stanford, BA from college. You think it's going to work the third time? No, it's not, I'd say to myself. So I go back, and you have 30 seconds to do your vault. There's some specified, I don't know how many minutes or whatever it was. I think it's 2 minutes. And so the clock was running down, and they're telling me to vault. So I'm back there going, first two didn't work. This is the third one. So I said, okay, it's time to take a gamble. Instead of taking off on your left foot, take off on your right foot. And I made it. I mean, it was crazy. But that day, yes, the day before, you had some questions, but I have an event that happened that nobody knows about. I've never told any interviewer, okay?
Well, we're open to it.
This is, aside from your questions, this might be a really good interest to you because it's something that never happened, I don't think, in the Olympics before. Okay. And it happened because the girl in the high jump, they have two different pits, okay? And so they take the 40-some guys in the decathlon, and they split them into each one of those pits. So, we had a little girl who was mumbling. Nobody could hear her, so our event did not start. The guys at the other end of the tracks completed their high jump with the same number of guys, and now it starts to rain. They jumped in the sunlight. And, and everybody knows polyurethane is slippery. Sure, you have heel spikes, but then you've got to be, it's not like cinders. Because in those days, cinder tracks were pretty prevalent. To buy a synthetic track was pretty expensive. So anyway, we had this little gal who was mumbling, and now it starts to rain. So I decided to go into one of the tunnels and walk up the steps. Actually, it was where they came in for the marathon. The end of the marathon, that's where they started and ended, beyond that tunnel. And I go up there, and it's a guy in a wheelchair. And I'm not sure who it is. I go over and introduce this is during a decathlon. I introduce myself. You may not know this name, but I'll tell you who. It was Brian Sternberg, America's greatest vaulter in the early 1970s. He was paralyzed from the neck down in a trampoline accident. Here he is in a wheelchair, watching me and others high jump in the rain. But it was like a spiritual moment because I knew who he was. I didn't recognize him right away until he introduced himself. But the poor guy, you could tell he was in a lot of discomfort. But we had this conversation going all during the high jump. It was raining, so it took me, I thought less about the rain. I was kind of inspired with this relationship with this angel that was positioned in the tunnel. And I wouldn't have been up there except for the rain and except for this little girl that didn't know what she was doing. I actually took over the high jump. And I went, you're up, you're on deck, you're in the hole. And then they finally brought somebody down to do it. I mean, I don't think any athletes ever run the high jump in the decathlon. Hey, you gotta be ready for anything.
Wow. When did you realize the gold medal was within reach? I mean, you had the 5 events over the 2 days.
Say that again?
When did you realize the gold medal was within reach? The 5 events were held over 2 days.
No, I never thought that way. No, I first of all, I have, when you competed as much as I did and loved it as much as I did, you have a certain amount of confidence. I mean, you don't have to prove it to anybody, okay? And so, I've always, whenever I approach a competition, I did it for 2 reasons: to get better and to achieve a good score. And in certain events, that's a great thing about the decathlon. You get a chance to be, in your pole vault, to be a personal best because you're so bad. Every time you get better, it's a personal best, right? But it's an event that I think you probably should go to a shrink before you do it, so that they can fully explain what the hell's going to happen, not only to your body but to your mind. But when you're in shape for it, it's different. But when you're not in shape for it, I can imagine it's a horror show, especially running the 1500, and you didn't train for it, So, you guys have some more questions, I'm sure.
Sure, you do. Tim, why don't you take the next one?
What was the experience in the Olympics like being in Mexico City in mid-October? Obviously Olympics, in the summer and this and that. Now you're in the fall. So how was the experience?
It didn't bother me because at one point in my life, especially in Colorado, we trained all year. And in those days, a lot of guys, they trained in college during track season and then didn't. Well, I would come home and do all-comer meets all summer. But the serious athletes would be in Europe, competing. Competing is the ultimate training. And what was your question? Did I miss that?
Just the experience of Mexico City and, obviously the altitude. Obviously, you already mentioned that it helped being in Boulder.
Yeah. One thing, I don't know if this is important, but, we had the Olympic trials. I live on Lake Tahoe. Incline Village is the Nevada side of the lake. And, but one of the things I learned, I made the decathlon trials in Lake Tahoe were the first 2 days. And then subsequently, we had trials in the 100, 200, all the way up 50, every event to make the team. And I have to tell you that it was very emotional because a lot of these guys, my friends, and a lot of guys didn't make it when they should have. And so I got very emotional. And at the end of the trials, I was beat to death. And so I decided when I went to Mexico City that I would only be in the stadium for opening ceremonies and for my event. And, that's almost towards the end of track and field. So I brought 2 books with me. One of them was Stendhal, The Charterhouse of Parma, and The Red and the Black, which was President Kennedy's favorite book. So I stayed in my room. I never saw an event until after I completed mine. I watched Brian in the 1500, watched the relay events, finals, and did an interview with Howard Cosell, who, by the way, became one of my closest friends subsequent to the Olympics. Because after the Olympics, we had all these meets like in New York and Boston and indoor season. And so I got to know him. And then he came out to California and invited me to meet some of his friends, like, Aaron Hilton. Anyway, the Hilton that was running everything. And I stayed at his place. I met movie star Telly Savalas. I mean, Howard was loved and admired by everybody. And people loved to take him down. It was an event. And it was part of his makeup. But anyway, he and I became great friends.
You were the first Buffalo to appear on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, a little less than a month after you won the gold. What was that like? And I know you have a most interesting story to tell about it.
I got two telegrams in Mexico City. One was, and let me tell you that why the Carson Show was important, okay? In my last couple of months in Germany, I got really sick. I was in a German, what they call Krankenhaus, hospital. And it turned out that I had mono and hepatitis. Luckily, it was not infectious, so I could get out of the hospital. But they did put me in a room where it said, entry forbidden into the room. I will tell you, this is the worst room I've ever been in. I had to get out of that room. As soon as they discovered I wasn't infectious, I got on a plane and went back home. But I was in bed from December 24th. I was visiting a lady in Stockholm. Excuse me. I guess I can't eat while I'm doing this. So I was in bed from December 24th in Stockholm in the hospital. Then I went to Germany, got in the Krankenhaus there, the hospital. Then flew home and they put me in the hospital in LA. I got out and I stayed in bed till April 1st. December 24th till April 1st. So I drive to Santa Barbara and it just was a whim. My parents were upset because they still thought I needed to recuperate. I had all my track gear, all my stuff. I'm driving. I thought I was going to go train at UCLA. Couldn't find a parking space, and I'm going, now I remember why I hated it, trying to get a parking space here. I said, I got to go somewhere where the parking is no problem. So I went to Ventura. And then I said, I've never been to Santa Barbara. I think I'll go up. I went to UCSB, and there was a track meet going on in this beautiful, idyllic track surrounded by these huge eucalyptus trees, green grass. And I'm going, wow, this is a place where a guy could train. And so that night, I rented a place, at least an apartment, and got a guy who helped coaching me, Pete Peterson, who was the assistant coach, also our Strider coach, and I was on the Southern California Striders at the time. And so not only did I have an idyllic scenery, but it was a place where I had also a Sam Adams, who was a decathlete and a neat coach and a great friend, who let me put all my equipment there, let me train there, athletes are not always welcome around because they tend to infect the athletes, with saying the coach may not, that type of. We had a great relationship, so it was, and it was by the ocean, and every once in a while we go train in the sand. It became a huge decathlon training center, but I was the first guy there in the decathlon. Coach Sam Adams had done it. And it just turned out to be perfect for training. Wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. And they had a campus, thousands of kids your age. And It was the reason. If I had picked somewhere else, I may not have had the success. But I will tell you this: after being sick, okay, until April 1st, my first workout, I walked a single lap. I also took a half-hour nap before and after every workout. Okay, I started April 1st, right? The national championships for the decathlon was in Salina, Kansas. I broke the world record on July 4th or 5th. And so muscle memory is real. I mean, I'll never understand, unless I'm an alien, I will never understand how I could recuperate so fast. But I staircased it, and a little bit at a time. I gave my body a chance to come back. And I tell you, the first time I ran a 400, the Strider said, "We need you for the relay." I said, "I haven't run time trial on the 400 for a year," whatever it was. And they said, "You can do it." And so I ran a good one. It was like 46 something. So I knew I was back. And, little by little, you get that confidence back. And
you had told me the Tonight Show played a role in your recovery. Bill, you had told me the Tonight Show had played a role in your recovery, though.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. When I was sick every night, the only part of the day that made me laugh, and it was infectious because it built out beyond. I mean, I started having a better attitude instead of feeling a little bit sorry for myself. And so when I got that telegram in Mexico that they wanted me on the Tonight Show, it was like a dream come true. And the other one was the dating game, and they lied to me. They said I would choose between 3 women. And I got there, and I was one of 3 guys who the girl was going to choose. And I was going to walk out because they lied. And this phony woman, we couldn't find any women. I said, "Did you try UCLA?" It could. And so I was upset. And bachelor number 1, if I were a house, why would I want to live in you? I said nothing. All I could think about was nasty stuff. Anyway, so I won the Olympics and lost in the dating game.
So in the Tonight Show, you said Johnny took you out to Mount Sac?
Say that again. I'm not getting great reception on that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, when you were on the Tonight Show, you had a story about going out to Mount Sac with Johnny.
Oh, yeah, no. To prepare for the show, he wanted to go through the decathlon events. And I have to tell you, the guy was very athletic. And, but he couldn't have been nicer, okay? Yeah, when you get to be a star at his level, there's very few people at that level. Or nightly, he has millions of people that love him, okay? And nowadays, these guys don't have a clue. These late night guys, it's all political crap. But Johnny Carson was smart. He never got into politics. He would hint sometimes. The fact is, spending hours with him and getting to know him as just a regular guy, it was more than I could ever hope for. And so then we went on a show. And so I think one of the first questions, because I picked Penland up after the 1500, he had fallen down. And so we're in this kind of I guess, I pulled him up by his shoulders, hugging him. And he said, this was a late night show. What did you say to him? Johnny, I looked over and I said, "Kurt, you have bad breath." And he flipped out. Because everybody always makes this big serious thing about the decathlon. And, basically I like to be funny. I like to have a laugh or two and be, have some kind of creative wit. And but that started the show. And I mean, you have to know that every night I'd watch this guy, and I'm probably one of his biggest fans. But he became my fan watching the Olympics. And see, I never knew who was watching or who wasn't. And I was in LAX after the Olympics on the way home, and from Mexico City to LA, and then LA to Santa Ana at the time. You couldn't get, that's where you had to go to get to Laguna. And this gal rushes over and plants a kiss on me. And I'm going, I like this.
We've got time for a couple more questions. Tim?
I made a decision. I have spent so much time doing this event. I love this event. I have more to do. I still, I didn't have the world record. So my last year, my number is 10, right? Born on the 10th. Mexico City has 10 letters. LA, where I broke the world record, has 10 letters. I did one on the 19th. 91 is 10 in numerology. I broke the world record on the 10th and 11th, 10, obviously. And so, I have all these, different kind of formations in my brain that I didn't know about until after I competed. And I broke the world record in the 10th decathlon of the 10th year of my competition at 10 o'clock at UCLA.
Bill, in 1976, CU celebrated its centennial and selected you as one of the 4 alumni of this century. What did that mean to you?
Oh, that was an amazing. I mean, I'd like to have a T-shirt where that's on it because it was an amazing honor. Luckily, I started to get good grades. I was kind of like your C athletic student. I was there for track and studies. I did that to stay eligible. I liked my classes, but it was kind of a continuation of high school. And then I realized, wait a minute, you're here for a reason. And then I discovered Buzzkirk over in the business school, and I was one of the key guys for one of the biggest wine companies in the world. And so I always was fascinated by marketing. And so I would take these classes because I don't know if you can do that now, but you can go to the business school and you can take any classes you want when you go to a university. You said that certain few for graduation, but that's where I learned. And later I advised Visa as a marketing advisor, and I put together a huge multi-million-dollar program. I have to tell you this one story. This is okay. I've traveled to over 50 countries. Okay, so I've been all over Africa, Ghana, Kenya, Ethiopia. But in Kenya, we went to a place where supposedly the Kenyan team trained. It was in the middle of nowhere. The kids running an 800 that day, nobody had shoes. And there was a pill. The varsity guys had shoes, but the kids, none of them had shoes. But they were running like the wind. But they had a place called Agony Hill. And it went from 8,000 to 9,000 feet. And so they would run up Agony Hill every morning as a pre-workout. So I said, hell, I'm going to run up Agony Hill while I'm here. Well, I had to stop multiple times. Then you get to the top and the vision is amazing. So years later, I get a call from Schlitz Beer. And they go, Bill, we'd like to have you in one of our ads. And I frankly said to the guy, I guess I had enough money that I was stupid. I said, I don't think it's appropriate for me to do an alcoholic beverage just 4 years later. I think it sends the wrong message. And I said, tell me the ad. He told me the ad. It was the worst. It was so bad, I won't even tell you guys. And I went, and the guy said, what do you mean? I said, well, it's terrible. I didn't say terrible. I said, the guy said to me, his name was Gail Terry. He was the account executive for Leo Burnett with the Joseph Schlitz Brewing Company. At the time, Schlitz was either second or third in the country. Now they don't exist except malt liquor. But anyway, so I say, no, I said, I think there's more possibilities. He said, well, why don't you give me one? So I told him about Agony Hill. He goes, wow, I like that. And then I said, how about this? How about oceans and continents? And he goes, okay, well, what about? Do you realize that a distance runner runs the circumference of the earth in 4 years? Do you realize a swimmer swims the distance of an ocean? And now I got the guy. And so I put together 12 ads, and they became an Olympic sponsor. And they got the rings. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, but I love to do marketing. And that was just one of those calls that turned into a pretty nice paycheck.
Well, Bill, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us today on our podcast. And Colorado Sports Hall of Fame appreciates it. And of course, you were inducted in 1971, one of its earlier members. So hopefully that's been a lifetime memory for you as well. So thank you for joining us.
Hey, I enjoyed it. And you guys have a great evening.
Right. You as well.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, we hope you're enjoying our podcast. Keep spreading the word. I want to thank our sponsors, Pasta J's of Boulder, CU Sports Medicine, and Tim's Colorado Collegiate Chronicle.
That's a wrap on our 21st podcast. We hope you're enjoying our reminiscing with our Colorado Sports Hall of Fame guests, as well as our trips down memory lane in the state sports history. A reminder that the Hall offers tours of its museum, as well as Empower Field at Mile High Stadium, and that the class of 2026, the Hall of Fame class, will be inducted on April 16th at the Hilton City Center in downtown Denver.